So I'm Kara, and I actually live in Southern California, just north of Los Angeles, and I have an art studio. I teach art to kids and adults, and we've been doing Zoom classes for about 2 years. So when we had the stay-at-home orders and my brick and mortar studio closed because of COVID, it was very easy for us to kind of pivot to do Zoom classes and open it up to a much broader audience. So today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through just a quick little art activity just to kind of give you a sense of how I work. I have two cameras, so you'll see me in the spotlight right now, but I'm going to switch my camera view in just a minute. And I'll talk to you about my setup as well, because I know that's why a lot of you joined and were interested. So I'll actually be removing my camera above me, which is my phone camera, and kind of walking us through my setup. So I'm at home this morning. So we're gonna do just a little drawing activity. So if you have a scrap piece of paper and a pencil, it's just going to take a couple of minutes. And the reason I'm doing this is so that you get a sense of how I walk students through a project. And then I'm going to do a little screen share, and we'll talk about kind of unpacking this lesson. So we're going to work with a pencil and paper. So I'm actually going to switch my camera view. And I'll save all questions until the end. I'm happy to open it up to any questions. You can always chat with me too in the chat box. So I'm putting my overhead view in the spotlight right now. So this is my cell phone that acts as my secondary camera. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw something using our non-dominant hand, just as a little warm-up. So if you have an object nearby, go ahead and just put that object in front of you. I actually have this little pot right here. So, and this is just a nice little icebreaker because all of the results are usually pretty silly. So when I'm showing students how to draw something, or if it's from life, I'll try to have an object in front of me, because though I can adjust the height on my camera, you know, everything is pretty small. I'll pan out in a few minutes so you can kind of see my work surface. This piece of paper is a 9 by 12, so you can kind of get a sense of how big I work with, you know, the kind of constraints of this tabletop. So when I'm drawing, I'm just going to use my non-dominant hand, which is actually my left hand. So I'm going to demonstrate, and then I actually will screen share something that you guys can look at as well. You don't have to draw my pot. So I'm just following my eye kind of around the edge of my pot right here, doing the contour line. So we'll just do a little fun contour line drawing, which contour just means the edge, the outline. And I did choose a rather simple object. I'm going to screen share something that you can also look at to draw. So there's my little pot. And now I'm going to screen share something that we can draw together, which is going to be this plant. And so if you have a piece of paper next to you, let's just spend a couple of minutes following the contours of the lines of this plant. Now, depending on what type of device you're using, my screen might of me being the host might have shrunk down considerably. You might see some of us, it depends on your settings, so we can talk about that as well. But you might see my hands off to the side. And when I'm drawing, we don't have to draw all of the plant, but it's just kind of a fun way to engage a different part of our brain this morning. Get our creative juices flowing. So I'm focusing on that top leaf on the right. when I do these kind of non-dominant hand exercises with students, they usually get a good laugh out of it because it really releases the perfectionists in us. We don't really have a choice but to make these kind of silly looking drawings. So give yourselves just a couple more minutes. We're not going to gather all of the information because I want to be able to answer any of your questions, and again, show you other ways to kind of bring art into your workspace at home. So I'll just do a couple more leaves, let you do the same. If any of you want to take a screenshot of this plant, if you want to keep working on it later, feel free. I'm actually going to stop and we can do a little share. So I'm going to stop the screen share. And I'm going to put myself back in the spotlight view. So what I've been doing is kind of juggling between the spotlight views as kind of the moderator for the workshop between myself and my work surface here. Typically what I'll do after I do a little lesson like this is I will turn it over to participants and I will ask them if they want to share any of their work that they've created. I never force anyone to share any of their work, but usually as soon as one person starts to show something, then somebody else will. And it's just a nice way to kind of build a sense of community within our space. So I see that only one of us is actually showing themselves this morning. So Betty, if you'd like to share your work, I'd be happy to put you in the spotlight. And if not, there's no pressure to do so. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to spotlight you. And there's Betty's little Monstera plant on her little lined paper. Very cool. Yeah, so it's just kind of a fun little way to engage artists. Thanks, Betty. So I'm going to actually disconnect my camera up here. I'll put myself back in the spotlight so you can see me. And then I'm going to take my phone down and I'll give you just a little kind of, where did my video go? Let's see, hang on a second. There we go. So I'm going to put my phone. So I'm holding my phone. You can kind of see both of me. If you put yourselves in gallery view so you can see myself and my phone. So my phone right now is facing my computer. So this is myself like looking at what I look at when I moderate. So if I'm looking at my computer and everybody is in gallery mode, then I can see all of my students at the same time while I have my phone on speaker view pointing down. So I'm going to pan out just a little bit so you can kind of see my work surface. This is my table. I share an office with my child this is his art room that he's let me take over. I have a number of lights in here. My most important light, I don't know if anybody has gotten a ring light. I feel like they have just been immensely helpful because it really just adds a lot of illumination to yourself. This room that I'm in it has one window, but the window, it's a very dark room. So I actually have an overhead lamp here. I have a ceiling lamp, and then I have another spotlight here. I also have a fan because of all the lights. It gets very warm in my space. Just panning out quickly, the other important thing to note is this camera mount. So this little camera mount actually came with my ring light, And I've actually attached it to a microphone stand. So my husband happened to have a microphone stand, but I will share an alternative to this. I'll screen share with you. I have an assistant, and she actually also has just a phone stand that she purchased on Amazon. So I'll share that link with you in a few minutes. And then the other important component that I found is this, is having your phone charger very close to an outlet. Now, because if you're using an iPhone or another, smartphone that has your camera, phone chargers are very short. So I have this extension kind of power system over here that has all of my computer components plugged in. It has my ring light plugged in, and then it has my phone charger plugged in. So I'll just put myself back up here for just a second and try not to drop my phone. So I usually do, I do this all before class ahead of time. I'll put this back on the spotlight. So you can see here's my phone charger, and I'm just gonna plug it in. And my cord hangs down, but because I'm not, for the purposes of what I do, the majority of people are viewing me this way. So if students have themselves in gallery view, they can see my face and my screen. And then when they need to, they can just put themselves in, put their settings to speaker view, and then it goes and zooms into the actual piece of paper. So that's a little bit about my setup. I'm gonna show you the phone mount. So here's the phone holder that my assistant purchased, which has been working really, really well because it is very stable and it has a long gooseneck. So she can get some good height on this. I'm happy to, if anybody wants to write down my email address, I'll give you my email address, which is info@theartery. I'm actually going to type it in the chat. So info@theartery, ARTERIE.org. And you can email me any questions that you have about any of your, your setup needs. But I definitely recommend a fan. It also, my ring light tends to run very hot. So just note that if you do get a ring light and you plug it into your power strip, they tend to run very, very warm. So sometimes I'll just even throw the fan on that just to kind of cool it down, because I'm running a lot of power to my phone to charge it, to my computer to charge it, to my 3 lights, and to my fan. So it's pulling a lot of juice. The other thing I was going to share with you is, well, I don't know, if anybody wants to kind of popcorn out their experiences that they've had or questions that they've had with how your Zoom teaching went in the spring when we kind of all switched gears. If anybody has any immediate questions, then I'm happy to answer those. Is it difficult to get students to get art supplies and materials in advance? No, at first it was. When we closed the studio in March, we still have the brick and mortar, but we're not using it for a public space right now. Because everything just was shelter in place and we didn't know how long, and shipping was incredibly slow, and we couldn't even get supplies easily. That was challenging. Now it's much easier. So what I have is a supply list. I have like our general supply list. It's actually a PDF document that I'll email to families. And then we've been packing up art kits. So we ran summer camp all summer, which is what we've done for years, but never shipped out any kits. And we were able to ship out kits nationwide, so long as we had enough notice ahead of time. I mean, obviously you're not going to be mailing anything because your students are local, so you could probably arrange some sort of a pickup if possible, which we did at the studio. We did contactless pickup. So we would package everything and have their names on it and just kind of have it stationed, and then they would just come and pick it up. So that was really easy, so long as you know exactly what you're going to be planning. I would say having kind of a stock list of what you don't have to replenish. So brushes, anything that's reusable, have that be one thing, and then all of the refillable, reusable stuff, have it be another. I think the biggest thing that was kind of frustrating to me was I felt it was a bit wasteful just in terms of packaging, because, to package up paint was really time consuming, and we used a lot of plastic, unfortunately, because students don't necessarily need paint in bulk. And obviously when you buy in bulk, it's more affordable, but then you have to kind of portion it out. So we're still kind of working out the kinks on that. Okay, let me just go through your questions. Our district is providing an art kit. Is there a website we can access for ideas for simple watercolor painting? Well, it depends. What kind of painting are you looking for, like lessons on how to teach watercolor painting? Okay. I don't know of any particular website. I'm happy to, offer kind of like side instruction to help facilitate that as well. Let me think about that offhand. I can't think of any particular website. I mean, there are countless YouTube tutorials and, kind of tips and tricks on how to do some simple watercolor painting. Betty, what age do you teach? 10-year-olds or 10th grade? 10-year-olds. Okay. All right. Yeah, so they just need some foundations, just knowing what the difference is between like wet on wet techniques and wet on dry techniques, and how to prep their paint. And a lot of it is going to come down to actually the materials that you're using. I always say buy the best quality you can afford, and some, it might just be dollar store watercolors, and some it might be a much nicer quality. And sadly, we will see the difference in the quality and the results, but for kids, it really is just about the experience. We are not using Zoom, but Google Meets. I have never used Google Meets. So I cannot speak to Google Meets because I am not familiar with that at all. Okay. Have any of you done any kind of like virtual shares with any of your students, where you've kind of had them travel with you, to visit a virtual museum online? Or with my students on Saturday, when the SpaceX launched, it happened to be launching during one of our classes. And it was really this awesome moment because we were able to, live stream it and then kind of all watch it collectively without, being in the same, we were in the same room, but not in the same room. And that was really, really awesome. I've taken students on kind of Google Earth tours of different landmarks. We did a workshop or a class earlier this summer where we looked at the Heidelberg houses in Michigan, and I, started us on Google Earth where I was, because not all of the students were even in Los Angeles. And then it kind of panned out, and the kids were, they were 5. So they were really awed by Google Earth and kind of the traveling across the United States. And then we kind of zoomed in on where these houses were. And then we did an art project around that. So that was super cool. I definitely would say, utilize as much of the technology that you have accessible to you. I'm constantly looking at museums and seeing what kinds of virtual experiences they're offering, to do as many little shares as possible, just to, to break it up a bit so that students aren't just watching me. The other thing I was going to say is, are you familiar with your settings in your Zoom? I'm assuming, well, I don't know how it's working for everyone in terms of, you know, if you have your own, like if you have your own Zoom account with your own access to your settings, and if you can get in there and, you know, doing like shared whiteboard experiences is really fun at the end of a session too. I don't know if anybody's done that, where you can share your whiteboard and then everybody gets to kind of collectively graffiti it, which is a really nice release sometimes. Or using breakout rooms. I'll get back to the breakout rooms in just a second. So Deborah's asking, how does Spotlight work on Zoom? So Spotlight is when the host chooses who they want in the kind of picture frame to see. So Deborah asked the question. So Deborah, I'm going to scroll with my cursor over to your kind of picture. And then when I land on your picture, I see an unmute button and 3 little dots. So when I click on those 3 little dots, there's a drop-down menu. And unfortunately, because I only see your picture, I can't spotlight you right now. I can ask you to unmute. I can ask you to start your video. I can spotlight myself. I'll just go over to my hand up at the top right, and I'll just click spotlight, and all of a sudden that's been spotlighted. And then I'm just gonna go back into gallery view so I can see everybody, because I don't need to see my hand enlarged. I'd like to see, the purpose for me having 2 cameras in front of me is so that I can see all of my students. And I capped my classes at 12, although I've been doing adult workshops and we've had as many as 40, which feels like a good number, because then you don't have too many screens to kind of scroll through to find people. So, and then I'm just going to go back into Spotlight here like that. And then I'll spotlight Betty, because Betty, thank you, Betty, is on camera. And then I'll spotlight myself. The other option is pinning a video. So when I have students in my settings, I actually have students on mute when they come in, and then they can unmute themselves. It's really great for younger learners, because then you can kind of, you know, get in there first. And it really depends on the lesson too. I don't always mute everybody at the start of class, but it is a nice thing to do. But what you can do also is pin video. So when everybody is unmuted, so that would be, I'm going to cancel the spotlight. And then when I pin my video, let's say I pin this video, and I want to, you know, just open up discussion to everyone in class, I can unpin it. And then whomever is speaking, usually, well, what should be happening is myself, and I don't know why that's not happening now, myself with the picture of myself should be highlighted with the yellow box around it, so that whomever is speaking, it kind of just toggles to each of the speakers, and then you can open it up to a good discussion, because you're just tracking the little yellow box and who's speaking. So that's kind of fun too. But I don't typically use the unpinning and letting just, you know, everyone open up until maybe the end of class, or unless I want to do something collectively at the start of class to just kind of get us all together and working. Let's see. I have a really great, I don't know how many sessions everybody is going to today, but I was going to screen share with you another, I found this, which was icebreakers for teaching. And I'm going to just share my screen, and you can, I'll try to, you know what I'll do too, let me copy the link and I'll post it in our chat. Let's see. And you can copy it and grab it, and then I'll screen share it too. So there's the link if anybody wants to just kind of copy and paste that. Hold on. Let me just go into a different window. I run my Zoom off of Chrome, but I typically use Safari when it just makes it easier for screen shares. If I have two kind of, I mean, you could have two windows open as well, but I tend to find it easier when I'm running Zoom off of Chrome because it's a little more stable with their updates. And then I screen share with Safari, because when I go into the screen share option with Chrome, it's easier to grab the screen shares from Safari than to find it with Chrome for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but that's just kind of the system that's worked for me. Oh, you know what? That address was inaccurate. So hold on. I think it got cut off in Chrome. See if we can do that again. Hang on. Go into here. There we go. So that was a correct address. Let me just screen share with you and we can just kind of. So there are, and I don't know how many of you are art teachers specifically, or if you're just looking to bring art into your classroom. I found this one, I thought it was really fun. This is actually where I, though we do the non-dominant hand drawing, I did find this icebreaker for today on this website. So this was just kind of cool because it has so many different kind of lead-ins for students. So we don't have to spend time reading through it, but you have the little link in the chat. Let's see what else I wanted to share with you just quickly. Did anybody? All right. I don't know, well, I can't see, but if anybody wants to chat with me too, if you are specifically art teachers or if you're looking to just bring art into your classroom. Betty, you are an art teacher? No, you were looking to bring art into your classroom. Okay, so, and Jared, are you looking to bring art into your classroom as well, or are you an art teacher?
I'm an art teacher, yeah. I work at Pacific Collegiate School, which is 7th to 12th grade.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
And Sarah, you're an art teacher too. Excellent. Okay, so I'm just gonna find, there is a really amazing Facebook group. It's got a very long name, so let me find it just quickly. But it really has been tremendously helpful and just a resource for, it's loading. Hang on one second. And I will screen share and you can grab it as well. Go into share screen and here. So it's called Online Art and Design Studio Instruction in the Age of Social Distancing. I found it from a colleague of mine who teaches high school. A lot of it is college-based, but most of the lessons that I teach my students are appropriated from college lessons anyway, because it gives them such a great quality experience. So this one has just a ton of information that I have found very helpful. Post. So you can kind of just scroll through here. Again, the name is really long, but Online Art and Design Studio Instruction in the Age of Social Distancing. And I think it has, I don't know how many members. I'm not sure, but you guys could check it out if you're interested. So I'm going to stop the screen share there too. All right. Are there any other questions that anyone has? I'm happy to answer and just kind of speak to materials or setup or you know, what.
I wanted to comment really quickly on Rebecca's question before I saw in the chat about Google Meets. We, at our school, we originally started with Google Meetups and Google Meets, but there was the application itself that we realized that there's actually some privacy issues. So that's why we went more towards Zoom. You can control the settings a lot better, and you can't have people really jumping in as easily into literally classrooms.
Uh-huh.
So there was some stuff with that, but also with Google Meetups, at least unless they've modified it since the spring, you could really only see maybe, I'm trying to recall, maybe 4 or 5 students at the side. The window is very different. You didn't have a grid view like we do in Zoom, which is great because, you know, my classes average 25 students. And so you can actually have the pinned person talking, but then you can easily be able to see the entire classroom at the same time. So the functionality of it is actually a lot smoother, a little easier. You can really see your whole class. That's what we found, but it was more so, I think at first it really was a privacy issue. So I think that's something to check with your tech people and at your school and the principal, the admin about it. But that's specifically why we transitioned over to Zoom, was to really be able to control the settings and be able to set up the kids' accounts before they actually got into it. It was convenient because we are not a Google school, but our email accounts are all powered through Google. And so that was a really simple thing to go into Google Meets, but overall you can still use your Gmail, the kids' Gmail passwords, and they can just log into Zoom anyway. But it was really great about controlling privacy settings. Literally when they log in, their video has to pop up on screen, but they are muted at the exact same time. And so we're able to set that up in Zoom. So there's a lot of pros for sure to Zoom potentially over Google Meets, but it all depends on what you're more comfortable with in the long run. But we as a school chose Zoom over Google Meets.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good information. Like I said, I'm not familiar with Google Meets, but what you said about, you know, all of the privacy settings and setting things up for kids ahead of time is definitely an advantage with Zoom for sure. And I do like that and again, it comes down to what kind of device people are using. You know, I'm assuming educators are using laptops, you know, to kind of log in to see and manage their classes. But, you know, then I have my 8-year-old who he logs into his class of 25 kids with an iPad. And, you know, that's challenging because he can't see everybody even when he does put it in the grid. So, you know, it just depends on the individual devices that everybody is using. All right. I don't know if anybody, I'd saved the last, you know, kind of 10 minutes or so to questions. Do I ever use pre-recorded demo videos, or do you demo them live? I don't use any pre-recorded demo videos unless it's something that I have not taught myself, or if it is something that, like, I don't ever use a demo video that I have done and then kind of regurgitate, because I think the kids, I think right now, and it, you know, it's a bit of a bias or my own kind of thinking on it. It's like I'm trying to get as much connection with students as possible in real time. So I'm trying to, and because I have an art studio that parents pay for, you know, me to teach, I don't want parents to say like, oh, I could just go on YouTube and, you know, watch a video and put my kid in front of it. So those are just kind of my reasonings, but I know everybody is different. So, but I do, you know, I did share this really awesome TED Talk the other day with my teen students, because I teach kids 4 to teens, and then I have adults. And I watched, you know, it was a 5-minute TED Talk video on the difference between art and craft and kind of the history of it. And they were really fascinated. So, you know, obviously the way that the video was presented was much more eloquent than I could have shared it. And so that's why I opted to share that with them. But it was about 5 minutes within the hour class that we had. I don't typically tend to have students' work take more than 2 class periods. Because, well, when I was in the studio, you know, kids would come to me and I would store their work, and they would go home, and then a week later they'd come back to me and they would continue working on their artwork. Yes, I will share the link for that TED Talk. It was really awesome. You know, now because we're home, and kids, well, it's summertime, so they're, they don't have schoolwork necessarily, but I don't want them to feel like they have to wait to finish their work until they come back to me the next time. But I also don't want them to feel stagnant in their artwork as well. And I don't want parents to feel like they have to leave a project out that they, for an entire week or however long until they come to see me again. So I've really been trying to condense my lessons to a much shorter period of completion time, not necessarily work time on working on it, but completion time. Obviously, the younger the student, the shorter the attention span, they're going to move through those projects a lot more quickly. Let me see if I can find that TED Talk really quickly. And then I will, hang on, I just shared it yesterday. So let's go into, it's in my, here we go. Let's screen share just quickly. It is, what is the difference between art and craft? And I will include this little address in our Zoom link. But it was nice because it was almost this black and white graphic that walked students through it. And then, yeah, so it was a TED Ed animation, which I'd never seen before. So let me just copy this and I'll drop it in our chat box for everyone. So I popped it in there if anybody wants it. You're welcome. And again, I'm happy to answer any other questions. I don't have any other information necessarily that I'm providing. I didn't know, who necessarily my audience was going to be this morning. I figured everybody wanted to, learn about art making at home, but I didn't know, the range of everyone's backgrounds.
I was going to share too, a couple other options for people is if you don't have, like you were talking before about using your cell phone as your camera, which is great. There's also relatively, what I have is an IPVO projection camera. There's some pretty inexpensive options of these, and you literally can set it up directly over on top of yourself, so it's built in and you can draw right underneath it. And so if people haven't seen these before, it's just a document camera. So like some math teachers who want to write just directly instead of on the board and want to use their paper, it's the same exact thing. It's literally just a camera that you can plug into your computer, so you don't need to have it charging anywhere else. It's powered through the USB port, depending on your computer that you're using. And there's different price points. This one, I think, was around like $150. So it's not cheap for this one, but there's less expensive models. But it's really helpful too, and it just props right on your desk. It's something that's pretty simple and easy to use as well. Especially if you're in a space, because I know we all have different work. I'm in my dining room, and there's no place for me to really like hang things from, move stuff around, and I don't want to take over my whole house with all my crap, to be honest. So I kind of set up and take down every day from where I'm working, because I don't have like a little extra room to work in. So it's really small and convenient. Something like that is helpful too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never seen one of those. And I would think that the positive part of that is, when I'm using my phone, I then can't get any phone calls, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. So, if parents are trying to reach me and they're texting me or I think if I had my phone turned around, so right now I actually have the screen of my phone facing down. If I flipped it back so that the eye of the kid, and then I could see my screen on the other side, I think my calls would come through, but typically they don't. So I could see that's just a downside as well. In addition to if people don't have an extra device to use. Was there something else, Jared, that you wanted to share? You said you had a couple of things.
Not necessarily in terms of devices, but for the other, I think there's a couple of other people who aren't art teachers. I think it's access to materials is really hard. We have supplies. It all depends on the school budget, right? And so it's a matter of timing and getting things out to kids. And it's really trying to use what you have at home. And so what we were doing in the spring is when we started in March online educating, I really kind of shifted to the ephemeral art practice, and I was showing them Andy Goldsworthy and really trying to use found materials in nature art. So depending, if you might have students who live with 4 families in a small house and don't have a yard potentially, and you might also have a student who lives on the ocean, who, in Santa Cruz, who knows? And so it's really trying to find access to materials that's equitable for all kids. Yep. And so, like I was saying, hey, let's do some Andy Goldsworthy inspired sculptures, but you can do it in your kitchen, and it can be up for 20 minutes during class time. And so I think it's really just trying to take advantage of what any materials the kids can get. Like right now, I'm just starting the school year with pencils and papers, and then we're doing a material push out day towards the end of August because we start on Wednesday. And so they were just getting the materials to kids was really difficult to start off with. So it's gonna be some basic skill building activities to go with. Other things we did, depending on the tech savviness of your kids and what age group they are. In the spring, I was doing digital journaling. So I had the kids each create Google slideshows, and they would have literally a slide per a day. And I would give them, depending on how long your classes are, 10 minutes at the beginning of class just to reflect on COVID and how crazy this all is right now. And I think the kids really benefited from a place to actually kind of get their emotions out there. And they, as an art teacher, was open-ended though. Poetry is art. They could write a little piece of music and record it if they have the capabilities to do that. They could sketch, they could do all sorts of things. And what was really neat is at the end of the school year, we had 2 full months of the kids had 30 slideshows of a digital journal. But they could also literally draw in a physical journal and take a little snapshot of it. And so that was kind of neat too, to be able to have the kids who want to just draw with pencil and paper, have that as their outlet. And so there's definitely ways you can easily incorporate it if you wanted to. I think we're all obviously talking about how important it is. The arts are the best for sharing their emotions. And so it's a good way, really trying to capitalize on that right now and letting it as a place where they can de-stress and share feelings if they're bummed out and not seeing their friends. But it's really, I was more, that was a little sidebar, but it was really trying to find whatever materials you have to use. So we were gathering stones in their yard and then making some really cool, maybe geometric shapes, and then talking about that in the art classroom. And so trying to incorporate that stuff.
Yeah, thank you for speaking to that. That's really, really important. And I have an assistant, and she actually started these art and nature workshops on Saturday mornings for $5 for kids, because we knew that not everybody had access to materials. And I have a longtime student who is voracious. She just wants to take all the art and do all the art and learn all the art. And she doesn't have any art materials at home, and it's tough, so I've packaged up things to send to her because she's 6 and she's just chomping at the bit to get as much access, as possible. I misspelled exquisitely, but in the chat box, I put exquisitely connected. There's a museum in Washington State called Maryhill Art Museum. I used to work at the Getty, and one of the women that I worked with is now working at this museum in Washington State. And she partnered with Monmouth Arts in Red Bank, New Jersey, and they have created this, it's Exquisitely Connected is on Instagram. And what they've done is they did a series of workshops where each participant worked in an 8x8 inch square piece of paper, and they had these kind of matching coordinates on north, south, east, and west that they had to, actually, let me show you so I can, I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll be quick. But they, all of the pieces get tied together, and they're creating this kind of virtual gallery. And when the museum is back up and running, they are going to be displaying all of the actual works of art. So I actually had hooked in with the organization and took all of my teen students. So this is student work from all over the United States that did these online workshops with this Exquisitely Connected project through the Maryhill Museum. So you can just screen grab that if you want to. Lou Palermo is the person who I was speaking about, who I used to work with. And you can kind of see, so these are the coordinates, the north, south, east, and west. So all of these pieces are connected to the one above and the one below. And though they're in this grid with this kind of framework, when the museum is open back up, they're going to be gathering all of the pieces. So everything was digitally uploaded and shared with this museum. And the curator from Monmouth, I believe, is going to be putting everything together. But this was, so speaking to Jared's point about just kind of like, the therapeutic component of just getting our emotions out, the framework for this particular project was to really talk about like how COVID has made us feel. And so all of these works of art, regardless of the age or the medium that the students are working in, was really just a reflection on, their experience with COVID, which I think was kind of neat to see. So this is actually, both of these two pieces were done by a parent of a longtime client of mine. And so this mom, they live in New York, and they were the kind of springboard for why I started Zoom classes 2 years ago online, because they lived in Los Angeles. They were moving. Their daughter was very sad about leaving my art classes. And I said, well, we can always Skype lessons. I just kind of threw it out there to them 2 years ago. And then, they tried a couple of local studios, and their daughter said, I miss Kara. And so I said, let's just try some classes. And so we were just Skyping lessons to begin with. And then it kind of grew from there. And so, we had students from Canada and other places in California, and then COVID happened. But I really love these pieces because this was like the heartbeat. So anyway, you could check out Exquisitely Connected. Let's see. Did I answer everybody's questions? I think so. Again, feel free to email me if you have anything. Jared, thank you so much for all of your shares too. That was really appreciated. And I think you're ready for your next Zoom appointment. Thanks, everybody. Take care.